Let's talk now about foreign affairs. This is the Cold War unit after all. But it starts with something going on here at home, the Interstate Highway Act. This may be Eisenhower's greatest accomplishment. He passed in 1956, or convinced Congress to pass, a bill that would spend $27 billion, with a B, $27 billion to build 42,000 miles of interstates. These are big 4-6 lane roads connecting the major cities. Now, if you're going to convince Congress to hand over $27 billion, you need to give them a good reason. And the reason that Eisenhower uses to justify spending $27 billion is national defense. He says, if indeed the Soviet Union does attack the United States, we are going to need to be able to evacuate the cities very quickly, and interstates are the way to do that. We're going to need to be able to move troops around the United States very quickly and easily, and interstates will be the way to do that. So national defense kind of is how he justifies that. It greatly helped the trucking industry, automobile industry, oil, travel, things like that. But it really sort of dooms the railroads and the inner cities. Great for the suburbs. It connects the suburbs to the urban area, to downtown. And it connects the suburbs to other suburbs. So, huge accomplishment here for Eisenhower. Okay. Next, we have something called Operation Wetback. This was the rounding up of as many as 1 million Mexicans in the United States, illegal immigrants here that were going to be deported. Happens in 1954. A lot of these were here from the Braceros program, goes back to World War II. But when that was over, they were supposed to go back home. A lot of them didn't. So Eisenhower rounds them up. It gets the nickname Wetback because the Rio Grande River separates Mexico and the United States, and we were going to send them back across the river. So that's where the nickname comes from. But it's the rounding up of illegal Mexican immigrants in the United States that were going to be deported. Now, Eisenhower decides that he is going to scale back the Army and the Navy. Traditional forces will be cut back because Eisenhower's view of national defense is to build instead a new air fleet of these super bombers. And that would be called Strategic Air Command, or SAC. Okay? Down here you see the sign there, headquarters of Strategic Air Command. Peace is our profession, yes, with nuclear bombs. These super bombers that Eisenhower is building, he figures gives us more bang for our buck. Rather than having a huge army and navy, he's going to have built these long-range bombers that could carry massive payloads of bombs, potentially even nuclear weapons, and we would deal with Russia or China wherever they ruled or raised their head in what he called massive retaliation. Okay? Massive retaliation. That anytime China or Russia got out of hand, we would knock the snot out of them with bombs. These huge long-range bombers would rain down bomb after bomb after bomb on Soviet Union or on China, wherever the need be. This idea that we could hit them so hard they wouldn't dare get out of line. Massive retaliation. So cutting back on traditional military forces and instead relying on the Air Force, Strategic Air Command. It's his sort of vision of foreign affairs and national defense. Okay? The first place that this will get put into practice is in Hungary. In the late 1950s, the people of Hungary stage a revolution to overthrow the Soviet-backed communist government in their country. They rise up against it. Now, if you'll think back to the Truman Doctrine said that wherever people are willing to stand up to communism, we are willing to stand with them. So the Hungarian people stand up to communism. They stage this huge rebellion to overthrow the communist government. Yet when they appeal to the United States for help, it is determined that our Strategic Air Command, our philosophy of massive retaliation, is too big for this little rebellion in Hungary. So we leave the people of Hungary just kind of hanging out to dry, and the Soviet military shows up and brutally crushes their rebellion. So we've already seen now once that massive retaliation maybe is not the best answer. Okay, let's turn our attention now for our last three bullets here to Vietnam. Okay. The leader of Vietnam was a man named Ho Chi Minh. And this is Ho Chi Minh here, Uncle Ho, he's sometimes known fondly. Uncle Ho, Ho Chi Minh will lead the Vietnamese people. And if you go back to as early as after World War I, when Woodrow Wilson, excuse me, was preaching self-determination and self-rule, we should get rid of colonialism and all that, Ho Chi Minh had appealed to the United States to help them overthrow their French colonial rulers. Okay? Vietnam was a colony of France. The Vietnamese people said, hey, United States, big on self-determination, self-rule and all that. How about helping us rule ourselves? How about helping us get rid of France? Instead, the United States chooses to pour about $1 billion a year into France to help them put down these rebellions. When the United States turns its back on Ho Chi Minh, he instead turns to communist leaders, particularly China, because the northern border of Vietnam is the southern border of China. And China is more than happy to have another communist country on its border. So when we refuse to help the Vietnamese people, they turn to communism instead. We choose to help the French. Why? God only knows. It was a huge mistake because the French will lose control of Vietnam to Ho Chi Minh and the Vietnamese rebels at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. It is the final battle that will lose control of Vietnam for France. Okay? The Battle of Dien Bien Phu. Ho Chi Minh will lead the people to overthrow the French and kick them out. Okay? Well, the Vietnamese people, the French, agree to peace talks in Geneva. It's in Switzerland. Okay? So this multinational conference, the United States is there, Britain is there, France is there, obviously, Vietnam is there, China, everybody involved. Okay? They meet in Vietnam, and they agree to a temporary split of Vietnam along the 17th parallel. Okay? So if you look at the map over here, right about there, okay, is the 17th parallel. So if you start at the equator and count up, you'll get to line 17, which is right about here. Okay? So Vietnam will be divided into, much like Korea, a communist-controlled North Vietnam and a free democratic South Vietnam. Okay? Ho Chi Minh will be the leader of North Vietnam, the capital of Hanoi, right there, and a man named Ngo Dinh Diem. It's pronounced Go. The first N there is silent. It's not Ngo, right? It's Ngo Dinh Diem. Diem will be the president of Free Democratic South Vietnam. Now, the deal was that they worked out at Geneva that within 2 years, they would hold elections. All the people of North and South Vietnam both would get to vote. Do you want to be reunited as one Vietnam under communist rule, or do you want to be reunited as one Vietnam under democratic rule? Well, the 2 years come and go, and no elections are held because the U.S.-backed South Vietnam realizes that communism is going to win. And if you know you're going to lose an election, you simply refuse to allow the elections to happen. So Vietnam would remain split from about 1955, the mid-1950s on. Our decision to back France, instead of helping the Vietnamese people, is going to come back and bite us throughout the late 1950s, all of the 60s, and into the 70s when we get into this mess in Vietnam.